Bom dia e bem-vindos a mais um episódio do Descomplicar as Finanças Sustentáveis, um podcast produzido em parceria entre o Jornal Económico, o ISEG Sustainable Finance Center e a Embaixada Britânica em Portugal. Este programa, este ciclo de entrevistas, constitui uma oportunidade para falarmos de finanças sustentáveis, para descomplicar estas ferramentas que estão neste momento à disposição das empresas e para falar, para ouvir o que têm a dizer alguns dos maiores especialistas britânicos e portugueses sobre de que forma é que as finanças verdes podem ajudar a combater as alterações climáticas e a apoiar os governos e as empresas nos seus esforços de descarbonização. O meu nome é Filipe Alves, sou o diretor do Jornal Económico e nesta conversa de hoje vamos ouvir James Hooton, que é o responsável, o Program Director do Green Finance Initiative, que nos vai falar um pouco sobre o percurso que esta iniciativa tem levado a cabo, no fundo, para criar estratégias setoriais e locais para atingir a neutralidade carbónica. Esta conversa vai ser realizada em inglês. Welcome on the show, James. It's wonderful to have you here with us.
Thank you.
And I would like to start by asking you to explain us what is the Green Finance Initiative, and how does the Green Finance Initiative work with governments and companies and other stakeholders in order to promote a sustainable economy?
Yeah, thank you, Filipe, and thank you for having me onto the show. So it's the Green Finance Institute was set up back in 2019 at the end of the UK government's Green Finance Strategy. It was one of the action items from that, and they identified an organisation that would be able to sit at the middle between private and public. And to not compete with public or private, but to sit at the nexus between those two sectors, and to try to fill the implementation gap that exists in moving money into the real economy. So we were set up with some seed funding from the UK government and the City of London Corporation. But we are now actually, as we sit here in 2023, we're mostly philanthropically funded. We are 35 people. Pretty much all of us have come from a finance background. So our chief executive was at Barclays, myself, I was at Goldman Sachs. So we are bankers by trade, but we are now working in a not-for-profit organization that is deliberately set up that way so that it doesn't compete with the finance sector. So we are really here as an honest broker to make sure that we are collaborating with the finance industry, because the one real focus we have is to make money move in the real economy. So we don't look at so much risk transition measures, green asset ratios, that we look at what do we need to do to get money moving in the real economy. And we tend to focus, we bring together coalitions, particularly in three main sectors is where we work. We work in road transport, we work in nature, and we work in the built environment. And we bring together public and private actors and quite simply say, what are the barriers to making money move in this sector, to decarbonize this sector? And then because most of those people have other day jobs, it's then our job to then move all of those solutions forward, working with them, but we then take the detailed implementation work to actually get the solutions that have been identified into the market.
So you work as a broker between private and public sector, putting together private businesses and public authorities in order to allow for to create a kind of sectoral, for a kind of local and sectorial strategy.
Yes, I think that's right. So you the private sector finance would say there's no demand for housing retrofit. This is what can we do about the trigger points? What can we do about the policy? And so we have a consultation group now, for instance, that then speaks to the UK government here and talk to them about if these are the things that as a private sector would help us getting money into that real economy. So can we create demand for some of our products? And then the government might say, well, yes, we'll do that. We can work in this way, but can you also create the products? And so we then go away and we can work with the private sector to create some of those products that are then in the market ready to meet that demand. So it is definitely a conversation. So that broker piece, you're absolutely right, is where we play.
In this work that you do, what are the main challenges and obstacles that you have found out?
I think there's a few. I think it depends which sector you're talking about. But if I can give you maybe a few examples that are, and maybe it's across that span different sectors. So one is these tend to be multi-stakeholder challenges. So you are needing to convene a number of people with potentially different outlooks on what needs to happen, and you have to navigate that. And that's how we operate. We navigate those organizations, and we find a common goal that we can all aim at. So there's multi-stakeholders, and they don't have the bandwidth sometimes. All the incentives. If you take someone in a typical bank, for instance, they are there. They might be raising capital for commercial entities. They might be funding the firm. They might be looking after particular clients. And so they don't have the time or the incentives to actually figure out what the particular sector or the system change is required. So, for instance, take electric vehicle infrastructure charging. It's a real chicken and egg problem. It's that people will say, I don't have an electric car because there's no charge point for me. And so what typically happens is charge points get built where there's traffic flow. And so when the capital invested into the charge point is paid back, and that loan is paid back fairly quickly to some extent, because you know that the charge point is going to be used and money will flow back into that and pay off that debt. But where the traffic doesn't flow, if a local authority who has the challenge to say, my residents aren't buying electric vehicles because there's no charge point, and the financiers then say, well, we won't build the charge, but we can't fund that because we're not sure the money will come back. So we then get into that problem and say, okay, is there some sort of type of financial structure that we can create that will enable the charge point to be built, and then which is ultimately called a utilization linked loan, and therefore the money is only paid as the utilization of that charge point increases. So structures like that across different stakeholders is where we try to add value.
You said that your background, you are from the finance industry. You were from Goldman Sachs, right?
Right, exactly.
You have a career in investment banking. Do you think that people in the industry now are more aware of the challenges in the climate change area and all the ESG subject? Do you think that things are really changing from what was 10 years or 15 years ago?
For 10 or 15 years ago, absolutely, we've come a long way in terms of awareness, in terms of the finance sector and what they see needs to happen, and that can be just through ESG investment. The ESG agenda is very much on the front pages of a lot of social media and news these days, be that for the good things that happen and also be that for some of the challenging things that happen. And that, I think, is where we try to work with financial institutions to overcome some of those challenges. So, for instance, they are aware of the need to act, but again, is there any demand? Do they have the data? Do they have the knowledge of the technology that's out there? And one of the big questions, which you'll see, I think was it HSBC I saw came out recently as a new risk that they've actually now articulated: greenwashing, fear of greenwashing.
Yeah.
BNP are being taken to court now, aren't they, over fossil fuel funding? That's the recent headline. So how do we work with institutions? So in the UK, we from the greenwashing perspective, there was a challenge when we started in 2019. There were 3 green mortgage products in the market, and one of the when we brought the coalition together, they said, well, we're concerned if we put a green mortgage on the market, people are just going to tell us this is just classic greenwashing. And because there's no standards, we didn't have any framework in place. in the UK. And so we developed those principles with the banks here to say, here are some simple principles that we can agree to, such as if you give somebody a green mortgage, you validate the use of proceeds. So you make sure they've spent it on a loft insulation or a heat pump, not on a new car or a holiday or a kitchen, whatever.
Yeah.
So do that, segregate it on your balance sheet. So a credit, you make sure that the work that's been done is to the right standard. So it's those simple things that then get the market moving. And we now have over 50 green mortgages in the market in the UK, and that's great work that has been done by the financial institutions on their product development, but also on some of these principles that we've worked with them to develop to overcome those challenges.
But greenwashing is still a risk. So do you think that the steps that are being taken are going in the right direction to fight greenwashing, or there is still much gray areas where it can facilitate the situation of people pretending that they are sustainable and not being so?
Yeah, I think we are heading in the right direction, and I think, like all the creation of all new markets, there are absolutely bumps in the road, and you'll see regulation that is potentially behind where the market is, and then regulation that might be ahead of it or trying to overreach it and actually dampen the ambition of the market. And I think generally we're heading in the right direction. I think there will always be people, unfortunately, on the periphery that will take advantage or find loopholes within that regulation, because the regulation is a work in progress. But I definitely think we're heading in the right direction, and we've come a long way. And I think sometimes, as I say, there might even be now a sense of sort of green fear. So rather than you don't do anything because you're scared of greenwashing, and actually then that's a real challenge, because there is private capital that's waiting to be deployed, wants to be deployed, but is scared of greenwashing, and so it doesn't get deployed. And so I think we need to really work with financial institutions, regulators, and market participants to overcome some of those challenges.
And going back to the initiative, what are your main future plans and goals for the green finance initiatives right now?
So across all our different sectors, I think we really need to, we're kind of in minimum viable product stage. Certainly in the built environment sector, we're working very closely with Greater Manchester Combined Authority on a big retrofit plan, and we'll do that across hopefully more local authorities across the UK. Similarly, in our road transport coalition, we have products identified that we're working to bring to market. This is, say, around EV cars, leasing, securitization of those, building infrastructure, battery manufacture. In our nature programs, there's a big year this year for us around the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, which we're the secretariat of. That framework is being launched in September this year, as well as another initiative we're running on our nature programs, working with farmers and finance. If you look at from a farmer's perspective, they have to transition to nature-friendly farming practices, and in the UK, particularly post-Brexit, a lot of the subsidy changes means that the funding for these changes to make sure that they are farming with environmentally friendly practices, that's going to have to come from the private sector. And how we do that and the barriers to that is what we're working closely with them on. So hopefully there will be a report in the coming months from that group that I think have real implications for the farming community in the UK. But in my conversations with people in Denmark and in Spain and in other countries, I think there might be work that we can do to kind of create that enabling environment for farmers as well.
Yeah, do you think that Brexit is going to make harder for the UK to be a leader in this area?
I don't think it'll make it harder for us to be a leader in this area. I think we have a really good track record of green finance, and I know that, as do other Paris, Amsterdam, and other countries and cities have a good record too. I don't think it'll make it harder for us. I think we have the ambition and the track record and the momentum, I would say, that enables us to continue to be a leader in this area. And what we are trying to do is collaborate. The challenge, I think, sometimes with the Brexit piece is the collaboration is coming into Europe and saying, can we work with you? And And to be fair, the vast majority of people I've spoken to are super open to that, which is great. And I think we just need to keep that dialogue open, because ultimately this is a global challenge, and regulation or challenges around political challenges. We need to try to break through the political cycle such that we can continue to work together and be almost agnostic to what happens in politics and very laser focused on the outcomes that are required.
So you have to work with other countries and for example, is there any possibility of expanding the action of the sphere of action of the initiative to Portugal, for example?
There absolutely is, and I'd love to hear from people if they're willing to work with us. So we are non-competitive, we are collaborative, we are separately funded. So we're not here to compete. We're here to work together. And in fact, I nearly made it to Portugal today, Filipe. I was in Madrid. I got back last night, speaking to. So I was in your area of the world this week, having amazing conversations with some government officials, with banks, with the Spanish Banking Association and others, to see how we can work with them on the challenges they're facing, for two main reasons, really, because we feel like we have an excellent methodology that we can help bring in and an approach, but also crucially, what's happening in Spain and other countries, we need to learn from you too. We need to bring that back into the UK to help accelerate the big challenges we've got here. We have huge investment gaps across multiple sectors, and I think there's some great work happening in Europe. And so we absolutely are looking to expand and to work with partners across Europe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, James, for this conversation. It was a pleasure. And I also thank our listeners, our public. And now I'm going to switch back to Portuguese.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Muito obrigado, James. Muito obrigado a todos os ouvintes. E o nosso programa regressa na próxima semana com mais uma conversa com um especialista na área das finanças sustentáveis. Até lá, um bom fim de semana.